on the 23-24 Premier League season was absolutely unbelievable. What was it though? I mean, the 3 teams that went up went straight back down, and Man City just won the league again. The whole thing seems a bit pointless, doesn't it? But despite the actual outcome and where we got in the end, the season was unbelievable. We had more goals than ever before. Thanks for that, Sheffield. So many iconic games. Remember Chelsea versus Man City 4-4? Or 3-3 with Tottenham? Bloody hell, that was amazing. My personal favourite moment of the season was Gary Neville calling Chelsea the £1 billion bottle jobs, but I'm sure you've all got your favourite. Remember Bournemouth's 4-3 comeback against Luton? So do not let the outcome of the season distract you from an unbelievable season it was, because, my God, it was a blast. And it's not over yet. We got the Champions League final, which I will be predicting, but spoiler, I'm going for Real Madrid to win it. So today I'm going to be going back and looking at the predictions that I made back in August, when the Premier League season had just kicked off. Now, I'd like you to bear in mind 2 facts before we get into this. First of all, I'm really bad at predicting things. Second of all, I made these predictions before the transfer window had ended. For example, at this time, West Ham had not signed anybody and was trying to sign the likes of Scott McTominay and Harry Maguire when I made the video. However, by the end of the summer, they brought in people like Edson Alvarez and Mohamed Kudus, players who are being touted for like 100 million now. So, things change. It's a long time a Premier League season. I need to stop with the excuses and just get on with it. 20th, I said Sheffield United. Get in! I mean, I would celebrate this prediction, but it's just a bit obvious, isn't it? It's like predicting Usain Bolt to beat my nan in a running race. It's like, well, obviously, but it's not really a £1 million bet, is it? Anyone who put a tenner on Sheffield to go down is... Oh, sorry, Sheffield United. Sheffield United fans hate it when you call them Sheffield. Sheffield United fans, honestly, I feel bad for you guys, though, because the season you've endured. Now, they started off alright, you know. For a minute there, I thought maybe this prediction is bad. Maybe they stand half a chance. But as the season went on, we realised that they were useless. I feel like they shipped 8 goals. Paul Heckingbottom was at rock bottom. They got rid of him. And they brought back the guy who relegated you a few seasons ago, Chris Wilder. It was just a lazy appointment which reeked of no creativity. The problem with Sheffield United this season was their defence and just the squad and quality just not being there. The owner did not spend money in the summer. He sold the 2 star players, and the new players they brought in, well, they tried. You know, Cameron Archer tried, but it was not enough. And I'm very glad that Ollie McBurney is really gone. Can't stand that guy. I don't know why. 19th, what did I say? I said Wolves. I'm fuming about that prediction. Right, so here was my logic here, right? Julian Lopetegui, as I was filming this, was still the manager, but he was on the verge of walking out. And who did they bring him in to replace him? Gary O'Neill, you know, that underqualified guy who had a fluke with Bournemouth. At least that's what we all believe, because he was sacked by Bournemouth. They also lost a lot of key players. Ruben Neves, Mateus Nunes, Raul Jimenez. Just to name a few. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. It was ridiculous. They didn't seem to have a lead striker, because no one could have predicted the season Mateus Cunha would have, and no one trusted Pedro Neto to stay fit, which he didn't, but they had a lot more going for them, Wolves. What Gary O'Neill was able to do was nothing short of unbelievable. I know they fell off a bit at the end, but to comfortably keep up that team when they were in disarray in August. So, huge credit to Wolves. I got that completely wrong. 18th. Surely I went for Luton, right? Nope, I went for Fulham. What? Okay, so I was trying to be cheeky with this one, I think. My logic here was that they lost Mitrovic and Marco Silva was being linked to Saudi, and I really thought that it would be a massive distraction to the club. Because the way Mitrovic left, I thought the environment at Fulham was not great and that they'd have a very poor season. And, well, they weren't as good as last season. They just kind of did the bare minimum. There was some points where they were absolutely unbelievable. Didn't they win 2 games in a row, 5-0 at one point in December? They're the reason that Arsenal are not lifting the Premier League right now. Everyone will tout to the Aston Villa losses, but to get 1 point in 2 games against Fulham is just not good enough, unfortunately. And they were very difficult to play against. I remember when Liverpool played them at Anfield, it was a 4-3 game. It took 4 wonder goals for us to break them down. So they were, on their day, Fulham are one of the hardest and toughest opponents to face in the Premier League. Muniz as well was the star breakthrough man. He wasn't a new signing, but he really went to another level this season. And, they finished, I think, 13th, I believe, in the end. I've not got the exact number, but I know I was way off by predicting 18th. 17th I went for Luton Town. No, I didn't actually think Luton Town would stay up, did I? Okay, so Luton Town, right, it's a bit of a myth, right? Because everybody loved the Luton this season, and they were very fun to watch. They gave it a go, and they really did try, and they were in most games. They very often weren't battered. Like, yeah, Man City put 6 past them in a game, but it's Man City, you know what I mean? In most games, they were competitive, which was more than most expected. But the story of Luton this season was the what-if story. They almost got something out of a game. They almost beat Liverpool, but conceded a last-minute goal. They almost drew with Arsenal, but conceded a last-minute goal. They were 4-2 up against Newcastle. In the end, that ended 4-4. They had so many games like this season where they really struggled. Whereas they were doing well, but it was just the defence that really let them down, of course, with most relegation teams. But they did have some bright sparks. I really liked Chong as a winger. He showed a lot of credit, along with that Adebayor, who I think he's definitely going to go into a better club. But the main story of Luton Town this season is the redemption arc of Ross Barkley. When they signed Ross Barkley, I laughed at this signing. I thought, oh my god, this screams of Jesse Lingard at Forest all over again. But no, he's turned his career around. I'll be shocked if we don't see Ross Barkley. Maybe it's something like Aston Villa next season. So Luton, you went down. I was only 1 place off, but I can't believe I actually touted you to stay up. But the thing is, if there wasn't point deductions, this wouldn't have even been close for Luton. 16th, I've gone for Everton. Get in! Spot on. 16th, they finished 16th. I was very happy with that prediction because they didn't finish 16th, did they? They got 15th. Brentford was 16th. Darn it, I was just thinking. I thought I had that, but then I remembered, nope. So, Everton this season probably would have been 12th or 13th, so this would have looked like a poor prediction. But of course, no one would have predicted the point deduction. Sean Dyche, the fact he wasn't nominated for Manager of the Season, and this is as a Liverpool fan, is absolutely unbelievable, because that squad is not great, you know what I mean? Like, DCL is one of the most overrated Premier League players in my opinion. He's just a big unit. I say that, but he did ruin Liverpool title hopes, so maybe it's just pettiness here, but I think they've got a lot of very, overrated players and stars that aren't fantastic. You've got Pickford, who's a very good goalkeeper, keeping them in it, Onana midfield, but the overall squad wasn't there for Everton, and I worried about Sean Dyche. I knew they'd stay up because they were better than teams below them, but I did worry about that sort of thing. And what I didn't predict was the breakout start in Branthwaite, who is someone who might be starting or at least playing minutes at the Euros this summer. Someone who me and, let's be honest, all of you had not heard of if you weren't an Everton fan last August. So that storyline has been fantastic. He's been a major part of everything Everton's done this season. And they've really surprised me because they've been hit with deductions, and usually, that would, you throw the towel in, you give up, but Everton kept fighting, and it was easy Fun fact, right? I actually looked at this. Everton, if they would have got no points in 2024, they still would have stayed up. That's how easy they made it look in the end. 15th, I went for Nottingham Forest. Oh, I was off here. Okay, I want to talk about the sacking of Steve Cooper. We didn't have many sackings this season. We had Paul Heckingbottom and Roy Hodgson, who absolutely deserved it. And now every manager has just decided to jump ship at the end of this season. But I'll talk about that later on. I think sacking Steve Cooper was a disgrace. Cooper was extremely liked by Forest. And even if Forest were to go down, which I don't think they would have, Cooper was the right man to keep Forest back up. But of course, the owner of Forest also owns Olympiacos, and he's notorious for sacking managers. They're like the Watford of their league in Greece. So I think bringing in Nuno was a downgrade. Nuno, he got a bit of a bounce. They beat Newcastle on Boxing Day with Chris Wood, the unsung hero of the Premier League season, of course. But I was extremely disappointed with Forest this season. I felt that on a worse year, you know what I mean, on a year where the promoted teams were better. For example, if this was the previous season and Forest were competing, I know Forest were one of the teams that came up, so that was a bad example, but any other year, usually at least one promoted team stays up. And I know they got docked 4 points, and maybe if they got those 4 points back, they could have been 15th, but I don't know. They were just uninspiring. Gibbs White, of course, goes under the radar, was very exciting. Awani, when he plays, is great, but they don't have that identity there, and I do worry about Forest next season. I really do. Okay, 14th, I actually said West Ham United. And you know what? This looks like a bad prediction because I'm 5 places out. They got 9th in the end. But West Ham are in a false position. Now, I was disappointed with the lack of summer activity at the time of West Ham. Of course, they'd later go on to buy some really great players. And those new stars have really kept them. But I think we saw the limitations of David Moyes this season. West Ham fans have wanted Moyes out for years now, which I think most neutrals would look at that and go, well, he's won you the Europa Conference League, he's had you in Europe for 3 seasons, and he's consistently kept you in the league. You've never really been in a relegation battle under him. But Moyes is a stubborn manager. He plays his style, and if you don't fit his style, you're not in. So I could see the frustration there. And his lack of wins this year was insane. He only won about more matches in 2024. And somehow he stayed in the top half. I don't know how. But they look great in moments. I thought that their Europa League campaign was very impressive. Of course, going up to Leverkusen was no, disgrace, considering only one team were actually able to beat Leverkusen all season. So I don't blame David Moyes for that. And I think Kudus really looked every penny's worth, and they're going to get great money for him. He could potentially go to Liverpool as a Salah replacement. I think if Salah is to leave us so much, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that kind of front three, when they've got Bowen, Paqueta, Kudus, it really worked. But most of the time they didn't have that. And when you had the depth they were bringing in, someone like Danny Ings or Maxwell Cornet just were not the same kind of stars. They also brought Calvin Phillipson on loan, which sounded like a good idea for both parties at the time, but it was more of a disaster class, with Phillips giving away red cards and penalties left, right, and centre. It was it was not a great showing. It really wasn't. 13th, I went for Bournemouth. One off. They got 12th. I'm gutted about this, because this was a really good prediction, because a lot of people doubted Bournemouth this season. I saw some saying they'd go down. Gary Neville, in fact, predicted they'd go down, which just shows clearly he doesn't know a lot about Spanish managers, as seen by his coaching at Valencia. But Iriola, what he was able to do, and kind of inflict his start, and it took time, and they could have sacked him, because he didn't win his first 11 games, I think it was. But they gave him that time, and look what he built, look what he transformed. And he's had key players out. Tyler Adams missed the entire season, for example. But his unsung hero was Dominic Solanke, who finally proved that he can do it at a Premier League level this season. And is really unlucky, really, to not be on the Euros playing, especially when one of his competitors literally was banned for 6 months and scored 5 goals since he's been back. I'll talk about bloody Gareth England's squad soon. So what went wrong for me with that kind of this season? So I feel like Bournemouth were very impressive, and I think they are one to watch because I only see them building from this, and I think Iriola will hopefully not be stolen by a bigger club, and hopefully they kind of let him have this kind of run. So many underrated players. There's a centre back who plays for Bournemouth. His name's escaped me, but he's a fantastic player. Bournemouth fans know what I'm on about. I've really been impressed by the things we've seen of Alex Scott, and I think it's a great project going on. 12th, I went for Crystal Palace. Now, this seemed like a very safe prediction. This seems like a banker, but unfortunately, Crystal Palace went on a bit of a madness at the end of the season with Oliver Glasner. Roy Hodgson Palace were mediocre. They got results, they did okay, they beat who you expected them to beat, lost who they expected you to lose to, but Hodgson had to go. It was that much was clear, and Oliver Glasner coming in, what he was able to do. I mean, he beat Liverpool and pretty much ruined the title race for them. He smashed Man United 4-0 with comfortable ease and beat an Aston Villa team in the Champions League 5-0. The only team he didn't beat, I think, was Manchester City, who was just impossible to beat at that time in the season. Trust me, I know. So it's so impressive, and I hope Glasner's able to retain the likes of Eze, Elise, Mateta. And don't forget, they've pretty much been without one of their best players in Czech Decore this whole season, having to play Will Hughes in midfield. I can't believe Will Hughes and Nathaniel Klein still get games for Palace, and they're actually doing well. It's unbelievable, really. Okay, 11th, I went for Burnley. This might be the worst prediction I've ever made. Oh crap, I've just seen what I've done next. Burnley under Vincent Kompany were a shambles. I'd argue they were worse than Sheffield United, because with Sheffield United, we all expected them to go straight back down. Yeah, they conceded about 1 billion goals, but the expectation was to not lower Derby's record, and they succeeded. They did better than Derby, at least points-wise, so I don't think they really failed. But Burnley, there was an expectation, I think, to stay up. And I think where I went wrong with the Burnley prediction was, I did not understand the gap between Championship and the Premier League, and also I didn't really look too much into who Burnley had actually bought, because they spent money. They spent a lot more money than Sheffield United and Luton. They spent 90 million, but the players they brought in were inexperienced, and they let go of a lot of the people who were keen into getting their promotion. And Vincent Kompany proves he's a one-trick pony as a manager. He has a style, this Pep Guardiola-like ball that he wants to inflict onto the Premier League, and he could not do it. He could not inflict it, and unfortunately, that's kind of how it went for Kompany in the end. So, yeah, it's disappointing. But now he's got the Bayern Munich job, so what do I know? 10th, I went for Tottenham. This is annoying, right? Because you're going to think that I had no credit for Ange Postecoglou and I just wrote him out. No, I was singing praises for Big Ange. I watched the video back and I'm saying how great he's going to be, but I said his first season's going to be a bit like Arteta or Klopp's first season, where it's they're struggling. And I cannot believe that I didn't back Ange, because I really thought he had something going from Tottenham. Look, they got 5th, and people say they bottled the Champions League, and they could have got there, but I think it's a great first season for Ange. I think until November they were absolutely phenomenal, and then that notorious game where they lost 2 players, went down to 9 men. It all crumbled for them pretty much, losing Van der Ven, Romero and Maddison in the same match. And the problem Tottenham had was the lightness of their squad. They had a great first 11, but if you're losing one of those fullbacks and you're bringing in Emerson Royale, it isn't good enough, unfortunately. Or, you know what I mean? Bringing in someone like Oliver Skip, these players are just not the level. Richarlison actually was somewhat competent this season, but Brennan Johnson, unfortunately, for the money they paid, disappointed me. Along with Kulusevski, who very much is turning into being a 6-month fluke, I feel. Son, of course, did his bit, although the most notorious thing of Tottenham this season was the embarrassing Tottenham fans who proved that they care about the hatred for their rival more than their own team, which I think is just shambolic, and I think that's really the main takeaway I've taken from this season. 9th, I went for Brighton. They finished 11th, and really, they should have finished ninth. They had a fantastic start, Brighton. But Brighton did kind of have that injury crisis. Being in Europe, they were more exposed to injuries. They lost Solly March for the whole season pretty much, and I thought Solly March was the most important player for Brighton. Matoma also picked up a big injury, but I'm not having it with Matoma, man. I think he's really overrated in the sense that I think people, like I see pundits criticise wingers who play for big six teams. Someone like Anthony, for example, and they say, oh, they should be buying players like Matoma. If Matoma was at Man United, he'd be getting all the criticism that Anthony gets. I can guarantee that. I don't buy the Matoma theory, sadly. I just think that Brighton didn't have that full squad. Defensively, they were very poor, and I think De Zerbi's kind of consistent playing out from the back and possession-based football got overran with a defence that wasn't always there. That Eagle just wasn't great. They were playing James Milner as a fullback for a lot of this season. He's just not got the legs to do that anymore. So Brighton, it was a case of injuries and too much ambition from De Zerbi, but he's gone now, and if Graham Potter does go back to Brighton, I'm very excited to see what we'll do, because they've still got some great stars there. And to sell people like McAllister and Caicedo, you know, most mid-table teams would be in a relegation battle, losing players of that magnitude for them. So to be comfortably okay and 11th is great for them. 8th I went for Brentford. I said that the loss of Ivan Toney wouldn't affect them. Brentford couldn't win a match to save their lives this season at a point. I think that they are another team that were hit by injuries, and there's a lot of teams that suffered for injuries, but I do want to say Brentford. Losing Rico Henry and Mbomo for large portions of the season, well, Toney was also out. I understand, and I think Thomas Frank is one of my favourite Premier League managers. I really like the way he talks about the game. I have so much respect for him as a guy, and I like the way he kind of sets up and delivers that sort of stuff. But it is a bit of a joke, isn't it? What's going on with them this season? So I do worry about Brentford next season. I think Toney will go, and Frank, he was linked with the Chelsea job. Someone might take him. I hope they don't, because I think he's got a great foundation. But I would worry about Brentford, because to go from 8th, they were 8th last season, I predicted them 8th again, and to 8th, 16th, that sounds like a sleeping giant walking towards relegation. So that's my worry. 7th, I went with Man United. Okay, now this prediction at the time seems like absolute bias. People would have said, oh, you're a Liverpool fan, you're predicting United 7th, you're having a laugh. But in reality, you were worse than that. You finished 8th in the league. Of course, you got Europa League football after that fantastic FA Cup victory. To win in that fashion, hopefully will do something for United. But no, it won't. This is the problem with United, is that they don't build off anything. They have one great result and then they can't capitalise off of that. I think throughout this season, United were hit with injuries, and having to play Johnny Evans and Casemiro as a centre-back pairing was hard to watch. And I will give United that kind of benefit of the doubt. But then I think you've got to look at kind of the signings, haven't you? And the profiles that you're buying. Why are you buying someone like Varane, who's got such an injury history? It's questionable. And Jose Mourinho criticised Luke Shaw years ago for his fitness and his injury record, but yet I think there's a huge issue going on. I think United were very much carried this season, not by their big money stars, Mason Mount, who, you know what I mean, but by the youth that Ten Hag developed. Kobe Mainoo was one of the breakout stars of the season, and someone who Southgate would be insane to not include. Likewise with Garnacho, who, although he was a breakout star last season, absolutely emphatically kind of progressed. But the players that flopped were the people you expected to do well. Marcus Rashford had a very poor season for his standard, and Anthony, he only scored like one goal in the league, didn't he? God, disaster class. But the signings I looked at, and I just didn't back it. Mason Mount, I did not get that signing, and I still don't. I don't know what he adds, I don't know what he does different that Bruno Fernandes can't do. I think it was a stupid player to buy. I still stand by that, and I know he's been injured, but when he's played even, you haven't seen enough of him. Andre Onana, of course, is a major talking point. He went from one of the flops of the season to potentially one of the signings of the season. But my main takeaway of Onana is that he's, it's a big pressure job going to Manchester United. It's a massive club, there's huge eyes, and I think he was just shaky at the start. I think he is a very quality goalkeeper. But I don't know, was he an upgraded De Gea this season? I don't know if De Gea would have let in some of the goals that he let in the Champions League. And I don't get his distribution. I don't really think it's been as impactful as people touted, because a lot of the time he's just kicking the ball long and out. He's not passing out from the back in the way you expected, because he's got players who can't play that style. Harry Maguire had a bit of a redemption season as well. Fair play to him. And Johnny Evans, a bit of a legend, but yeah, all in all, it was not great. 6th, Aston Villa. Now, I'll be honest, that was probably one of the higher predictions you'll see. If you watch any YouTuber, I doubt many people put Aston Villa higher than 7th. So, I really thought that Emery would build off of what he had with Villa, build on the momentum and transform them. And I thought Emery did a fantastic job. I think to get Aston Villa in the Champions League is insane. It doesn't matter in the fashion that he did it. And I really liked how kind of some of the signs. I thought Diaby was hot and cold throughout the season, but he showed great quality. Pau Torres is genuine argument for one of the signs of the season, the way he adapted and his kind of relationship with Ezri Konsa and kind of other players. That was that was really exciting. So my only worry with Villa is squad depth and over reliance on certain players. I think Ollie Watkins was ran into the ground by Emery, and can Emery build on this? Can he take it to the Champions League? I think next season will be a step back naturally, but it was a great kind of build. 5th, I went for Chelsea. Now this was almost a disaster prediction, but luckily they decided to get together at the end. Chelsea had a very weird season. They sold so many big name players, and they built it off of a young squad, but there's one name you've got to talk about when you talk about Chelsea this season, and that is Cole Palmer. I didn't get the Cole Palmer signing. I thought that they were just buying somebody who could play Sterling's position. Bloody hell, Raheem Sterling's gone. He's been destroyed by Cole Palmer. I think that this guy has absolutely had a coming of age season and is probably the player of the season in my opinion, because you're in a way worse team than Foden and Man City and you're doing better numbers than him. So I think that is crazy what he was able to do. And I think they really built something. It was a kind of like a bunch of strangers who didn't know each other at the start, but they kind of built. Even Caicedo looked half decent by the end. So Pochettino naturally got sacked, even though he had his best form in the end. I do not get that sacking. They lost to Wolves twice, so that was a bit embarrassing. And they lost the cup final against Children, so it wasn't all in all a great season for Chelsea, but to scrape Conference League football when you really didn't deserve it is, I think they'll take it. 4th, I said Liverpool. I was one off with Liverpool, but it's a weird season for Liverpool Football Club. Of course, now we were kind of the laughing stocks of the transfer window, losing out on the likes of Lavia and Caicedo and ending up with a 31-year-old from Stuttgart wasn't ideal. We brought in McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai, who are both very good signings. I think Szoboszlai definitely had a weak second half, but brilliant in the first half. And McAllister was alright in the first half and had an unbelievable second half for me. Liverpool, of course, no one expected them to actually be in a title race, and to last until November was impressive, but of course, perspective changes throughout the season, so it was disappointed, especially with the January announcement of Klopp leaving. And I think people criticise Klopp for doing this, and many people deduce the loss of the title to that, the kind of early announcement. But my personal belief is that it would have leaked in the press, and would have been worse had it leaked as then Klopp doing that announcement. So I think the main reason Liverpool lost the title and weren't able to compete to the end of Arsenal and Man City was due to their squad depth and due to injuries. They had a lot of injuries throughout the season. There were times when they were playing kids in a cup final, and I think the minutes of over-reliance on certain players like Endo and McAllister and Van Dijk really got to them, which led to mistakes, which led to, kind of collapses and all sorts of that sort of thing. So I do worry. about the future of Liverpool, because like Arne Slotty's a bit of a gamble because he was bringing someone from the Dutch league. There's been mixed success with that, but I do like what Arne Slot was able to do with Feyenoord, and I think that fans have to get behind him and support him. So of course I was one on. Third, Newcastle. Did I really think Newcastle got the Champions League again? Newcastle, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of Geordie fans were expecting immediately the Man City effect, and it's going to be a slow process for them because of FFP and the way that restrictions have been put in to avoid another 1-1-5. Don't worry, we'll get to them in a minute. I was really impressed with Newcastle. From what I saw this season, I think Isaac had a very solid season, and even Wilson delivered when he needed to. I think Sven Botman's injury, and there are so many injuries for Newcastle. They were pretty much playing the same 11 every week at a point, and it was obviously not sustainable. The Champions League was unfortunate for them. To beat PSG in the fashion they did and to get a point at AC Milan was great, but that robbery against PSG was insane. That was never a penalty. Never a pen. It was insane that they gave that. So, and they were in a group with Dortmund, who have gone on to go to the final, and PSG were in the semi-final, and AC Milan, who I believe got to the quarter-final of the Europa League. So, strong opposition, and they gave it a go. And I think Newcastle will be back next season. I think Eddie Howe needs more time because to face that many injuries, United were bad, but this was on another level to the likes of United and Brentford. So, okay, top two now. I said Man City second. Oh, come on. The one sure thing is to say Man City won the league and Sheffield United 20th. Every YouTuber got that, surely. But no. I think I bought too much into the whole, there's never been a four-peat. We couldn't see Bob Paisley do it in the 80s. We couldn't see Sir Alex do it in the 2000s. Not even Huddersfield in the 50s could do it. No one in English football ever done 4 in a row. So I think naturally most people were like, can Pep do it? And he did. And this title win is a weird one because they were never really in the driving seat. It was Liverpool at the top, and then it was Arsenal at the top, and then Man City snuck in at the end there, like they always do. It was just such an afterthought for City, and I think City were weaker this season. I think if this was prime Liverpool, the team that got 97 points and didn't win the league, it would have been over ages ago. But unfortunately, the competition wasn't much better than Man City, so they kind of rocked up and stole the title last minute there. And I think a lot of their signings didn't work. Kovacic, Mateus Nunes just weren't able to find their feet, and Guardiola, he took a while, but eventually he did come good. And Doku, that guy, step over, he does a few cool tricks, but there's nothing there. It's just, he's a tricks merchant, I swear. So that's my kind of problem with Man City this season. And I don't know if I do 5 in a row. I feel like to lose in the Champions League and lose in the FA Cup the way they did, is it a great season? It's insane to say, but for the standards Pep set, I don't know. First, I did say Arsenal. And I think Arsenal were the best team in the league this season, which of course, I'm going to sound like a delusional Arsenal fan. I don't even support Arsenal. But for me, to win the Premier League, you've got to beat your competition. And Arsenal were able to beat both Man City and Liverpool, and went undefeated against all Big Six opponents, of course. Well, traditional. I'm sorry, Villa fans are going to be fuming about that. Of course, Villa did do the double over Arsenal, which did not help them. And losing games to West Ham and Fulham also did not help. And Heung-min Son being paid the 116th charge didn't help either. But Arsenal were unbelievable to watch at times this season. The way they absolutely destroyed teams. Kai Havertz proved everyone wrong. Everyone had him as the flop of the season, and he somehow delivered. Saka with a very solid season once again, but they really built off that back four. Saliba and Gabriel, they were able to keep them fit pretty much the whole season, and that partnership is one of the best ever, honestly. They were unbelievable. Ben White had a great season as well, and although they never really had a consistent left back, whoever was there did a shift. Declan Rice also has an argument to be signing in the season. No one talks about the price tag of Declan Rice. You never see people tout that, so I feel like that says everything about the quality of player that they got with Rice. So that's kind of my prediction. So the only prediction that I got dead on was Sheffield United in 20th. yeah, this was a disaster. Next year, I'm hoping to do better. Come on. Spoiler, Southampton, you're going back down.